Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is June Gridthiya Gaweewong. Greetings from my office in Bangkok at Jim Thompson Art Center. I welcome to the Artist Talk Alternate Histories in conjunction with the exhibition ERRATA at MAIIAM Contemporary Art Museum in Chiang Mai. The exhibition is an attempt to present alternate histories and a small narrative through the artworks of 38 artists and 4 archives. ERRATA at MAIIAM is a metaphor that represents MAIIAM's collection and selected works as an alternative histories of modern and contemporary art in Thai art histories and beyond. So this public program is part of the project called Collecting Entanglements and Embodied Histories, a dialogue between collections of Gallery Nationals in Indonesia, MAIIAM Contemporary Art Museum, Hamburger Bahnhof in Berlin, and Singapore Art Museum, initiated by the Goethe-Institut. The project manifests as 4 exhibitions. I have to focus that it's 4 different exhibitions. It's not traveling exhibitions, with distinctive curatorial narrative in the 4 collaborating institutions, as I already mentioned. So we already have a lot of regular programs online, which we will continue until July. And so it will be live streamed from Facebook and YouTube, a video essays series by art practitioners, art historians, curators, and more. So the curatorial team consists of Anna-Catharina Gebbers, Grace Samboh, June Yap, and myself. So yesterday, Grace just opened her show at the Galnas, and I congratulated her on this. And I hope that everyone in Indonesia have a chance to visit the show. It is my great pleasure and honor to host 3 artists and a scholar, Koh Nguang, Samnang Klai, and FX Hasano, the artists who participated in my show, ERRATA in Chiang Mai, and Dr. Chairat Phonmak, whose works tackle history, social histories, and collective historical memory, affected by the ongoing socio-political in their own context. So the artist's works unpack the complex grand narrative histories and show how they use different artistic approach to trace the history and resistance as they revisit the period of silence of their social memory and consciousness. And they will share with us how they unfold the process of these entanglements and provide counter histories. In this session, Alternate Histories, I invite Koh, Samnang, and FX to give a 15-minute presentation. And then Dr. Chairat will reflect and comment on the exhibition and the presentation. So I would like to briefly introduce the speakers. The first one is Koh Nguang, a Singaporean artist and researcher who I met him in the mid-1960s in Bangkok. Koh was born in 1963 and worked with the National Museum Art Gallery as a curatorial assistant from 85 to January 1992. He has been associated with the art collective Artist Village since 1989. And he began exhibiting art archive from 1992 to present. And the distinctive one was Performance Week at Gallery 21 in Singapore, and notably in the ERRATA at P10 Singapore in 2004, which I saw the exhibitions there, and I think P10 is one of very important alternative art space initiated by Tian and Jennifer, so this exhibition became an inspiration for my work at MAIIAM. Koh also initiated Singapore Art Archive Project, or SAAP, in 2005, and has since been known for his extensive archive on Singapore and Southeast Asian cultural development. And he has subsequently presented more than 15 thematic works and exhibitions under the SAAP in Singapore and abroad. So we sometimes bump into each other in the exhibition, such as in Sun Showers in Japan and Taiwan. Okay, so next one is Samnang, who was born in 1982 in Phnom Penh in Cambodia. So Sadai Samnang. And Samnang graduated from painting department at the Royal University of Fine Arts. And his work is more or less like multidisciplinary artistic practice and offer new views of historic and current events and of traditional culture rituals using humorous symbolic gestures. He focused on humanitarian and ecological impact of colonialism and globalization. And his work has been exhibited at his home and abroad in major exhibitions and festivals, including Haus der Kunst in Munich, Biennale of Sydney, Documenta 14 in Kassel, as well as at the Jim Thompson Art Center. Currently, he lives and works as an artist and a member of collective Sasa Art Project in Phnom Penh. And he will return with Sasa Art Project to Documenta again in the 15th edition around mid of this year. So we hope to see you guys there. Okay. So, and the next speaker is FX Hasano, who needs no introduction in Indonesia and the region. But for those who are not familiar with FX, who was born in 1948 in Indonesia, and he is a seminal figure in the Indonesian art history, contemporary art scene. And his artistic language is relatable to the current new social and cultural context. And he has been highlighting issues concerning with the Indonesian Chinese minority in this country since 2000. FX received the Prince Claus Award from Netherlands in 2014. And in 2015, he received the Joseph Ballester Awards for the Freedom of Art from the US Embassy and the Art Stage in Singapore. So the last speakers is the discussant, Dr. Chairat Ponma, who is a lecturer at the Department of Thai Faculty of Arts at Chulalongkorn University, Bangkok, where he teaches Southeast Asian language and literature, culture theories, and media studies. Dr. Chairat received a PhD in Asian literature, religion, and culture from Cornell University. So his research focused on effective and intermediate aspects of post-Cold War literature and visual cultures, especially in Thailand, Laos, and Cambodia. His writing have appeared in journals of letters and Southeast of Now, directions in contemporary and modern art in Asia. And he has also written articles on Akshat and Richipan for Oxford, bibliographies in cinema and media studies. Dr. Chairat is a member of editorial collective at Southeast of Now, the very important journals of contemporary and modern art in Asia. So please find the copies in the bookstore near you, okay? Without further ado, I will give the floor to all the speakers and the discussion now, please. Go, it's your turn.
Yeah, do I share screen?
Yeah.
I share my screen? No.
I think Ranki would be.
Yes, so I don't, yes. That's the intro slide, yeah? Hello, everyone. Yeah, I suppose I just get into this presentation. Before I talk about ERRATA, I think I will talk a little bit about my Singapore Art Archive project. It is ongoing since 1999, and I gave it a name in 2005. So this project is called Singapore Art Archive Project. So it pretends to be an art archive, or rather an archive related to art in Singapore and its wider international connection. Next, please. Do I Okay, I think I'm not controlling the slide. I'll say next slide, something like that, right? Okay. Can you go back to, yeah. So yeah, most Singaporeans stay in government apartment, or we call it flat. So my archive started in a apartment like this. Next, please. And in Singapore, we are going to celebrate Chinese New Year next week, and yes, you can see that my parents' apartment, when it's not having Chinese New Year, it is very messy with my archive, and when it's during Chinese New Year, so next week you'll see something like a picture you see. This is my apartment. Next, please. This is my rented space or studio. Some of the projects that Jeab has sort of mentioned that I have done came from this space. Next, please. My collection for the archive project started with newspaper when I was in high school from 1980, and it continued until today. Basically, it's the English papers and the Chinese paper, yeah, in Singapore. Next, please. Next, please. Artists in the news, and which I did one project in the Singapore Biennale, which I will show later. Some artists appear when they pass away. They appear in the obituary. If they are very famous, then of course they will appear on the front page. Next, please. Yes, as Jeab has mentioned, that I used to work in the National Museum Art Gallery, and as an artist, I'm self-taught, and I only learned some paintings in high school. So at the museum, we had many international and local exhibitions that I worked on and learned from all these exhibitions. Next, please. Yeah, these are, yeah, it says, this slide is, it talks about photography as a tool that I started to use in the museum work. And I actually went to Bangkok in 1989 and 90 for my museum training, and one was on documentation. Yeah, photography is my main media. Next, please. Yeah, we had all kinds of exhibitions, and you can see that where sometimes journalists would pay attention to, let's say, the guest of honor or the prize-winning artist. So as a museum staff, I decided I would not take the same angle as those many photographers. So I would take behind the scenes, work in progress, audience, etc. Next, please. Performance art sort of appeared in the museum program in the late 80s and early 90s. So these are some of the performance kind of activity. Next, please. Some of you may recognize Tang Dao in the picture, top two pictures, and Amanda Heng on the lower left picture, and Zai Koning on the the right. And some of the visiting Japanese curator, you may recognize them, Ms. Furuichi from Japan Foundation, Mr. Masahiro from Fukuoka. Next, please. Next, please. Yeah, so the museum would, of course, have invitation cards, posters, press releases. This is before we have the internet, right? So my collection would include such kind of ephemerals. Next, please. Yeah, these are some examples of ephemerals from different decades. These are from the 1950s. Next, please. 60s. Next. 70s. You can see the design sort of change a little bit. 80s. Next. Right. So yes, we with regards to Goethe-Institut and the German embassy, so we had quite a number of German exhibitions that came to our museum. Next, please. Yeah, you can see the collage exhibition card, and Joseph Beuys and Cathy Kollwitz. Yeah, they were from the Goethe-Institut and the German embassies. Next, please. Yeah, next, please. So I would exhibit the exhibition ephemerals whenever possible. You know, this is at my residency at Gilman Barracks with the NTU-CCA in 2014. Next, please. So as this is an event sort of connected to MAIIAM Museum, and I thought I sort of highlight a little bit of my Thai art ephemeral collections. So I started to collect since 1989 until 2000, year 2000. Next, please. Next, please. And this is from Indonesia, a event that I hosted in my residency space at Gilman Barracks. The only time I've been to Indonesia was to Bali, a short trip in I think it's 2000. Yeah. Next, please. Yeah, this is the a small gathering of people during the presentation. Next, please. This is the Artist Regional Exchange, number 3. This is, I think, an important event that allow artists from Southeast Asia to meet each other. And in this particular one in 1992, next, please, I got to meet people like Hasano, Tan Ching Kwan, Wong Hoi Chong, you know, from Thailand, Kamon Pausawat, Bicho, you know. So next, please. These are the slides that I took. Next, please. Next. Yeah, as you can see, Hasano's work. Next, please. Next. Next, please. This is these are the 2 Thai artists. Next. So Wong Hoi Chong and his video work on the massacre of the mostly Chinese population in Malaya, Singapore and Malaya. during the Japanese occupation, which I will touch a little bit later when after Hasano presented this. Next, please. And there's the ARCs also invited historians and curators. So this is Mr. Apinan talking about Thai art. Next, please. And Mr. Apinan also wrote an article. Yeah, Southeast Asia artists come together in Australia. Yeah, quite strange. The fact that you know, we had the ASEAN grouping, and then we have the ASEAN sort of painting, photography, and children's art series. But you know, somehow Australia got us together. Next, please. And this is my residency exhibition in Phnom Penh in 2016, curated by Vera May and Melanie Memo. And this was my, I think, my second trip to Cambodia. Next, please. This exhibition, I sort of introduced the archive of some Singapore artists who went to Cambodia and Thailand in 1963 under the theme of the 10-man art group trip to Cambodia and Thailand. So I sort of introduced the archives from 1963 in this particular exhibition. Next, please. Yeah, you can see the black and white pictures taken by the late artist Sui Tik Singh. Next, please. The picture on the right should be at Silpakorn University, and of course the one on the top should be at in Bayonne. Yeah. Next. You can see Samnang shaking hand with a friend. Next, please. Yeah, so after I left the National Museum in early '92, I became an artist and associated with the Artist Village, and of course, you know, participated in events like ARX, and then of course. Subsequently, next, please. Next slide, please. Yes, I was invited by the Fukuoka Art Museum in 1996 to coordinate an exhibition which they were organizing called The Birth of Modern Art in Southeast Asia, Artists and Movement. So the show was to be in 1997. And next, please. Yeah, with the arrival of the internet and digital recording devices in the late 90s, I decided that, you know, my focus should be the older artists, especially you know, with the exhibition. The projects that I assisted with the Fukuoka project, that I learned that, you know, yes, I should pay more attention to the older artists. Next, please. Yeah, so through bringing the foreign curators, in this case, the Fukuoka curators in the picture on the right, top right, you can see Mr. Chu Keng Pang from Singapore showing a woodcut that he did in 1954. the theme was students protesting against the so-called national service, which is the military service, that the British government wanted the young men to serve. And the wood block was shown to the Japanese curator, Mr. Masahiro, and Mr. Rawang Chai-kun. And this sort of research trip allowed me to discover more about our own artists compared to working with the State National Museum, for 7 years. So it is for me an eye-opening experience that what you can do as an independent researcher and what you can do, what you not learn in a state institution. Next, please. This is Mr. Lim Yu Kwan, who was the president of the Equator Art Society, which will later appear in the ERRATA exhibition. Next, please. Mr. Tan Ti Chi, a famous woodcut artist as well, but he also did some oil painting. Apparently, he was one of the earliest Equator member that did not have a name in the history of the Equator Art Society, which I will talk a little bit later. Next, please. Mr. Koh Nguang is an artist associated with the Equator Art Society, and he is one of the few artists who did painting related to the Japanese occupation in Singapore. So I mentioned Mr. Wong Hoi Chong from Malaysia earlier on, but in Singapore we have Mr. Koh Nguang. Next, please. And this is Mr. Lim Sui Chun, who is formerly from Singapore, but he moved to China in the early 60s, and he remained in China. But in one of the exhibitions that I helped to research on woodcuts in Singapore, he came back for holiday, and he saw his works in our exhibition at the History Museum. And it was a chance meeting, and then he was talking about his work in our exhibition, which we couldn't identify because many artists in the past use a pen name when they make political works. Next, please. So I sometimes collect very precious and old publications through situation like this, that the school moved out of the old building, they moved to a new building. So sometimes libraries collections are abandoned, like in this particular scene. Next, please. These are examples of Singapore Arts Magazine and Malaysia Arts Magazine. Singapore was part of Malaysia in 2 years. 63, 64, 65 is 2 years. So these are arts magazine published in Singapore and Malaysia in the 60s and 70s that found to be abandoned by the school library. Next, please. We have many bookshops in, they usually the Chinese language bookshops that had to close because of the change in the education system in Singapore, and also the adoption of English as a first language, compared to in previous time where there were school with Chinese as first language, and also a Malay school as well. So these are examples of in the early 2000s where they have no more readership, for Chinese language books. Next, please. Occasionally, when people move house, when they get old or when the old folks, pass on, so occasionally things like this happen, and whenever possible, people try to save the books from being destroyed, in the fire or in the garbage bin, Next, please. This hard copy newspaper from the original Chinese newspaper company in Singapore. They were moving to a new building and they were merging with the English paper to form and the Malay paper and the Tamil paper to form a bigger newspaper company. So this is early 2000 as well. So they informed me and my friends to take them away. Next, please. So with the accumulation of different kind of archival materials, I decided that the best way is to show them. So I have actually exhibited archive materials as early as 1992, as in this particular event called Performance Week in a new gallery called Gallery 21 in 1992. Next, please. So we're coming to the actual ERRATA exhibition that I did, and also sort of inform Jeab when she did this exhibition in MAIIAM. And this is the layout of the two showcases that you will see if you go to the exhibition in Chiang Mai. And so we go to the part 2 slide, which is on ERRATA. Do I have enough time?
Actually, you already,
over
time, but
okay.
Maybe 2 more minutes.
Yeah. Can we go to the part 2, which is on ERRATA then? Yeah, well, waiting for the new slides to come up. Yeah, so we continue with this. Next, please. Next slide. So the ERRATA exhibition happened in a new space called P10, and it's also a curatorial team. Next, please. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is taken from the Facebook of P10. Can we go back to the P10 slide? Yeah. It was a new sort of curatorial team. You can see 6 names over there, and subsequently become 5 names. I think Charles Lim left. And of course, Win Tian Wei, who and Jennifer, they were also part of the Artist Village. And when Tian was studying in Goldsmith, I sort of provided a little bit of my archive especially on Southeast Asian contemporary art. So when Tian approached me under P10, next please, to do an exhibition in 2004. Next slides, please. Yeah. I thought it will be important that I share my experience with the Singapore art history, and also the kind of archival materials that I have come across. And so I decided to use a particular era in this book, Channels and Conference, by director of Singapore Art Museum, Koh Chow, published in 1996. And so this is the page where you also see in the MAIIAM exhibition. And then in fact, there are two errata in this page, on this page, but I only sort of highlight the errata on the date of the painting, of this particular painting. This particular chapter is on social realist trend and the woodcut movement, Equator Art Society. So next, please. Next slide, please. So I think, yeah, I will move on quickly. But the fact that the painting by Chua Mia Tee was exhibited in a 1960 exhibition of the Equator Art Society, right? And so this is one of the clues that informed me that the date of 1950 in the Singapore Art Museum book could be a mistake. Next, please. Next, please. I will jump these few pages. Next, please. Next. Next. Okay. The fact that can we go back to the last one? The previous one? The previous slides, please. One more. One more. Yes. The fact that yes. Okay. The National Museum, where I used to work, we did a solo exhibition of Mr. Chua Mia Tee in 1988. And the painting, the Natural Language class, was correctly dated as 1959, right? And subsequently, in other exhibition, because the museum had the actual painting in the collection. So before the 1996 book by Singapore Museum, the dates were correct. Next, please. Can we jump to the woodcut? Okay. Okay. So obviously there was a typo error, but was it actually a typo error or a data entry error when the museum adopted the computer system? Did the data sort of were sort of entered wrongly, right? So anyway, I also did research on Singapore woodcut, and it was an exhibition by the History Museum in 1998. And next slide, please. So Mr. Lim Sui Chun, who was one of the pioneer woodcut artists in Singapore, wrote an article in 1963, January, that Thai artist Prapan Sisuota had a show in Singapore in 1962, and Mr. Lim, the Singapore artist, admire what he did, in terms of the themes of village scene, and also the use of bigger wood blocks for doing the woodcut. You can see I visited Mr. Sisota in Thailand. Next, please. So this is the ERRATA exhibition at P10. So it is an apartment, and there were a number of units used by young artists. So next, please. So I did a mind map of using the chapter written by Mr. Koh Nguang Chow. Next, please. And I decided to display 5 groups of publications in response to the chapter that Mr. Koh wrote. And this particular group is on the issue of national language in Singapore, the national language policy. And incidentally, the national language of Singapore till today is still the Malay language, right? So another clue is that there were Chinese people learning Malay in the painting, by Mr. Chua Mia Tee. So it is also indication of how the local population try to adopt and learn the new national language. Next, please. And another category is the Equator Art Society, which is known as the leftist or social realist art group in Singapore, established in 1956, but officially disbanded by the government in 1974. And Mr. Chua painting the national language class had a sign that says "Gift of Equator Art Society." So that's why I have to introduce the Equator Art Society as well. Next, please. Next. Yeah, so looking at the different art collectives in Singapore, you can see that the Equator was formed in 56 and deregistered in 74. And then there's another group before Equator was it's also need to be corrected, because we go to the next slides. Next, please. Yeah, the group before the Equator was the Singapore Chinese High School graduates of 1953 Arts Association. It's a long name, but it was shut down by the British government after 2 years. And it was a group formed by many high school graduates, especially from 1953. The fact that Singapore was going to have the new Nanyang University, right? So this many high school graduates supported, this new university, as they could not, most of them could not travel to China again unless they want to remain in China. Yeah. So because Singapore was anti-China and anti-communist in the 50s. Next, please. So I found a book that has a seal of this art group. It has a long name, and we simply call it Yi Yan Hui, Yisu Yanqiu Hui. So loosely called Art Society. Next, please. These are the 2 fundraising exhibitions by this particular group to raise funds for the Nanyang University. Next, please. Next, please.
I think I have to cut you here because we already over time.
Yeah. So can you just run the slide? Just run the slide. And you just stop at the last slide. Then I conclude. Yeah, sure. So the fact that I want to deal with issues related to archives. So it doesn't mean all archives are bad or all archives are good. As you know, there are problems related to archives. So I hope people also question my archive project. Thank you.
Thank you. So
Thank you.
I invite Samnang. Next, please.
Yes, saying Gridthiya invite me and also Mr. Koh bring us back to the story. And especially I saw myself in your presentation. I'm very skinny, but now a bit healthy. So of course today I will be talking about my work just to show in MAIIAM now. Is title is Rubber Man. Yeah, it's called Rubber Man. Rubber is we never cross up colonized way after the plantation. So yeah, so I back to colonized friend in China in called Caoutchouc. Caoutchouc is mean from Brazil. Is the language of Brazil is mean tier of tree. So the friend will bring the caoutchouc to grow the biggest in Indonesia, especially in Cambodia is a largest of rubber plantation. It is about how colonization and development their benefit of the. So I mean they will be cutting tree and to benefit of this. So this is our map after colonize and now. Yeah. So when we are talking about colonize, yeah, and we think about concession land, yeah. So it is we got in 2012 my government is so headed with protester in city like indigenous with land right, human right. They come to a city to protest of that because of 2.5 million of hectare of the land to give up 271 of concession land to the different countries, especially the biggest is in Korea, Vietnam, and China. And till now, it is a lot of China more concession land and all like partnership development. Yeah. So I think about this is kind of yeah. Into that in 2012. Yeah. Next. Yeah. In 2012, the government had that with this. So how they find solution? They ask a student in the university, they don't have the skill of measure the land to come different province to measure the land for find solution. But of course, it is helping that more over than concession land. Yeah. Yeah, and like this, yeah, image how they are in before I inside of their team and the student team to document and also research of my work too. So when I come and see and that that time I got to question mark on myself like this is. What is this? And the people in there, they call it a spirit. You know, this is a spirit house, a forest. But I look around the image. Yeah, look around the image. Yes, so it is few tree. And where is the tree gone? Yeah, of course, it is kind of concession land impact a lot of things that is with the indigenous and some concession land like example like in 2000 from 2005 2012 it's like a 2% of like a real concession land, like they development develop the land. That, but almost them they are cutting the tree. This is you know, this is kind of benefit more the tree, and they bring to Vietnam and to the China and like a buyer, and they make a furniture. Yeah. So, and then after that, after I researched of this question, I saw the image, the spirit house like this. So I come back. That night, I was a dream. Yeah. So I will be show you a video because I shoot this video. It is from my dream. Yeah. Yeah. So, and that night, when I arrived home, I was a dream the white guy. The white guy, I don't know who is him, why he come to my dream. He showed me around different plantation, like a different tree, different landscape. Some big tree, some small tree. So I don't know who is him, but I wonder the realize this the tree is kind of a systematic of the tree. It's like a people grow it. It's not a natural tree. But in that time, I have one friend in Ratanakiri. This is the north of Cambodia. Near the where that I research is in Mandalkiri. So when I come that his farm, I saw a lot of rubber plantation, and I realized this is a new colony. And then I can't wait. I still wonder who is come to my dream and show me, and there's the same thing in the where that I stay now. And then I just don't care, like just collect the rubber from the pot or from the tree, and put on the pocket and threw in my body. When I saw this in the video of recording of mine, I realized, I think this is the spirit, as they are lost the house, they lost everything as the people come to the city to protest. They want to come to me because he want to show something to me. They want me to share something. Yeah. So after this, so I have been work this rubber man project related to my dream with Corona way, and also my installation. Yeah, I had some installation. Also, I collecting some wood tree of the rubber tree from the colonized to build something like human and unhuman conversation. This is the animal and tractor and excavator to conversation. This to my relate to my projects. So I think this is a very short presentation. I hope it's okay, and also we can answer more of your question if you want to know more. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Samnang. That was so beautiful. I didn't know about the dream part, so I have a lot more questions for you.
Okay. Yeah.
And next, FX, please.
Jeab, and also hello everyone. I want to show my presentation. Oh, sorry, I must to start from the. Yes, I want to talk about some work who related with the work that I show in ERRATA now. Sorry, yeah. The title of that show, that my work was rewriting the erased name. On December 27 at 1966, a law regarding name change was enacted. Chinese descent who had Indonesian citizenship were demanded to change their name into Indonesian name. This regulation was stipulated under the Cabinet Presidium decision with this number. On regulation on the name changing for Indonesian who use Chinese names signed by Presidium Chairman Army General Suharto. That's 1966 is after 1965, where the government say that the Communist Party will make a coup in Indonesia, so they against to all of the everything who related with the Communist Party and also with the Chinese people, because they say that this coup was supporting by the Chinese government, China government in Beijing. The law of the name change is a form of discrimination that leads to psychological pressure to ethnic Chinese in Indonesia as a minority. After the mass riot in 1998 in Jakarta, Suharto stepped down from the presidency. This incident brought about the crucial change into the political situation in Indonesia. Freedom of speech and democracy was progressing. When Abdurrahman Wahid became a president in 2002, he made a significant change in which the Chinese were allowed to celebrate their religion and carry out their cultural activities. And also the school can teaching the Chinese language, because before, during the Suharto era, or during the New Order era, the school cannot teach the Chinese language. The Chinese characters cannot show in the public area or public space, and all of anything who related with the Chinese culture was banned by the government. The Chinese people cannot celebrate their Chinese New Year. So next February, 2nd February, there is a Chinese New Year. Before we cannot to celebrate, but now all of the Chinese people can celebrate. The geopolitical and culture situation made me ask myself, who am I? This question made me question my identity as an Indonesian Chinese descent. This genealogy issue has finally become my inspiration for creating work of art, raising the term of identity. This is my Chinese name, Hu Feng Wen. And then this is my Chinese name in Hokkien dialect, Ohong Bun, and then there is FX. FX is my Catholic name. This is FX, and then become FX Harsono. So I had the Chinese name that I had not used for 30 years. My Chinese name is Ohong Bun or Hu Feng Wen. Oh is a family name. Hong means harvest or rich, and Bun means literature or art. My name, Francisco Savirius, shortened as FX. I changed my Chinese name to Harsono, FX Harsono. And this is my what is it, the certificate when I changed my name become Indonesian name. So I got the certificate to show that I have changed my name, that from my original name, Chinese name, into Indonesian name. And that I changed my name when I was 18 years old. When I was 18 years old, I had to decide on a citizenship to be Indonesian. I was obligated to change my Chinese name to Indonesian name. I try to remember my Chinese name. I studied Mandarin for only 4 years in grades 1 to 4 at the Chinese public school. After 30 years, so I forget anything except my Chinese name. I try to write my name, characters by characters, and then I made a video performance called Rewriting the Erased Name. And I still remember my Chinese characters of my name. And this is my performance. And then I make a installation like this. This work was shown at 4A in Sydney. And then I've been working with this theme and produced several works, including the video performance of Writing in the Rain. I think this work was brilliantly expressed my feeling and inner conflict at that time. So I consider this work to have significant meaning in my artistic journey. After more than 30 years at 2010, so maybe there's more than 40 years. So I realized that I already exist as FX Hasano. So I'm thinking that maybe I never thought about my Chinese name again. But there's a conflict, inner conflict from me. I have a Chinese name, now I change, now I become FX Harsono, but I also remember my Chinese name. And then I made a video performance with the title of Writing in the Rain. This is, I write my Chinese name in a glass. And then after that, so there is a raining, there is a water come and flush all of the name that I already write. This video at 2018, in January 2018, was shown in Times Square for 1 month. Every night they show this video in a 16 big LED screen. And that's amazing for me, and of course I'm very glad because this video was shown in Times Square for 1 month. Yeah, and also this is the other work who are related with the Chinese name. The names mentioned in the song lyric are the names of the Chinese people massacred in 1948. This is the concept of my next video art about name or nama. I took the name from the mass graves in Blitar, Tulungagung, and Kediri. The Chinese people who died in a mass killing did not change their names to Indonesian name because there was no rule for name changing. From 2009 until 2019, I make a research and about the massacre of the Chinese people during 1948 until 1949. And I found 10 mass graves from East Java until West Java. And in every mass grave I found tombstone, and there is a writing of the name who the Chinese people who was buried in these mass graves. And I found around 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 2,000 people from East Java until West Java. But that's not all of the people who killed at the time was found by the Chinese community and buried in the mass graves. And then I make a video called Nama. Nama is a name, and Nama is from the Dutch language, but also from the Sanskrit language, Nama. And there's this performance just only a song who's sing by a group choir from the student choir, and I make a collaboration with the musician and also the actors and who made what is it like a performance, something like that. And this is the video. I made this video at 2019. All of the lyric in this song was the name of the Chinese name changed into Indonesian name. Yeah, that's my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Go. That was FX, sorry. It was so beautiful. So please, I would like to hear from you, Dr. Sharat. The floor is yours now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeab. First of all, I would like to thank you, Jeab, for inviting me to join this exciting conversation with the artists today. It is wonderful for me to learn about Koh Nguang archival practice, about FX Hasano artistic reckoning with the history of violence in Indonesia, and about Kwai Samnang critical engagement with colonial legacy and its continuing impact in the neoliberal present. I was asked to give a short reflection, not directly on the artist presentations, but the exhibition that I had a chance to see earlier this month, last month. So let me begin with that before returning to my co-panelist talk later. July 31st, 2008. I remember Field Marshal Sarit Thanarat's monument in Khon Kaen. What a shame. You see, there is so much ugly history here that it would take centuries to unearth, to be able to tell the histories freely. How can one work here and not get personal? These words are not mine. They belong to Apichatpong Virasetakul, whose enlarged film poster memorial was put on the facade of MAIIAM Museum when it won the Cannes Jury Prize last November. You see Gridthiya here. I took this passage in which Apichatpong expresses his frustration about the troubling history of the Cold War and military authoritarianism from a publication in conjunction with his traveling exhibition, The Serenity of Madness, curated by our very own Jeab Gridthiya. The passage is Apichatpong's correspondence with the late Benedict Anderson, whose writing has been crucial, and this is Serenity of Madness that I got a chance to see in Chicago in 2017. It was also at the MAIIAM in Chiang Mai. And this one is specifically about this video installation, is specifically about the monument of Sarit Thanarat that he mentioned in his email correspondence with Benedict Anderson. This passage is Apichatpong's correspondence with the late Benedict Anderson, whose writing has been crucial in understanding the Cold War construction of Southeast Asia as political entity, as epistemological object. It might take centuries to unearth the ugly histories of the Cold War, as Apichatpong wrote 13 years ago. But this year alone, we witnessed the shared efforts to tackle the specters of the Cold War. So beside ERRATA, future tense at the Jim Thompson Arts Center, and a minor history at 100 Thonson Gallery are also currently on view, each dealing with remnants of the Cold War in its own way. This is from ERRATA, of course, from the MAIIAM Facebook page. And this is future tense at the Jim Thompson Art Center. And also this is a minor history by Apichatpong in the 100 Thonson Gallery. Reflecting on the ERRATA in particular, I can think of two interrelated themes that are recurrent in the history of Southeast Asian art. First is how to imagine an artistic collaboration as a form of political alignment beyond the persistence of Cold War geopolitics, especially with regard to the institutionalized form of regional collaboration promoted by ASEAN, I'm not an art historian, but from what I've researched so far, art historians have been doing a lot of work how to unsettle this kind of ASEAN promoted form of intimacies or collaboration in the region. For example, the Ambitious Alignment volume edited by Phoebe Scott and other scholars of Southeast Asian art. And I think in this volume and other writings as well, that art historians are really asking how can we move beyond this infrastructure, the persistent infrastructure, economic structure of the Cold War in the post-Cold War era that make this region become a kind of political entity and an object of studies as well, that Anderson also talked about earlier. And we can also ask that after the fall of revolutionary dreams of the left movement, how might we rethink transnational projects and aspirations for radicalism? This is the work that I have seen in the exhibition of work with Triyavanit and Thomas Wu that this talk about the theme of revolution. I don't have so much background, but maybe Jeab can mention about it. But I think one of the things is that I want to think about this exhibition is that how after the end of the Cold War, that it's not just the loss of life that we have that FX also talk about, but also the loss of a kind of the utopian dreams of revolutions and a kind of the left movement, a kind of solidarity, for example. How can we imagine that in the post-Cold War era? What kind of alignment that we have, or what kind of shared aesthetic sensibility after the Cold War? In relation to this question of trans-border solidarity, is the urgency to reckon with violence and trauma in the wake of the Cold War. Writing against ASEAN and its regionalist sentiment, David Tay proposed that any renewed internationalism after the Cold War must take into account, in quote, transnational revenants that speak to the political violence and historical injustice during the Cold War era. And in this book by David Tay, Thai Art, that and this is the last chapter of his book, he talks about some of the cinema of the filmic production, for example, the Apichat Phongvisatakul Primitive Project, Vitipan's S21, The Missing Picture, Joshua Oppenheimer, The Act of Killing, Ami Muhammad, Village People Radio Show, and Ho Suyen, 10,000 Tigers, for example. All of this work that he surveyed, and he concluded that the spectral moving images surveyed above are haunted at every turn by the Cold War, both in their narratives and immanently in their very media, the electric vectors of an ideological contagion that drew the region together as such into a shared regional present. So I stole Ko's one slide from Ko's presentation. So the work and artistic practices of Ko, FX, and Samnang respond to these issues that I just mentioned, the two issues that I just mentioned. But also I think, it's also respond to the very fundamental question of how to build an archive alternative to the official historiography of the Cold War. And I would briefly discuss their work, and then I would just have a question for them, for each of them. So for Koh Nguang, I think one of the things that emerged from his presentation of practice is that how do we think of the archive in relation to art history and in relation to art object proper, if we can have that, an art object as a kind of aesthetic object. So in co-presentation and practice, archive as a kind of written documents, periodicals, for example, ephemera, exhibition catalogs are very important to his collection and his practice. I think the question that I have is that for Koh is that what do you think of the relationship between the archive and art history and the archive and the art object? One of the things is that the name of the exhibition, the ERRATA itself, come from a kind of book history, a kind of the field of book history, for example. And it seemed to me that here it talks about the relationship between the archive and art history in the way that the archive will be a kind of corrective or can be mobilized to rectify a misunderstanding, a misrepresentation, a misinformation about art history. But I think there's more potential than that. And I think I've seen that from your work, but probably you can mention that a little bit how you see this relationship between art history and the archive, right? Because a lot of your objects are not, what do you say, like art object proper or a kind of aesthetic objects. You have periodicals, ephemeras, and exhibition catalogs as your archive. And probably you can mention about that or can comment about that. And for Somnang, I think is an attempt to rewrite colonial history and specifically a kind of environmental history that I think not many artists deal with that. I think a lot of a history of Cambodia will focus on either a kind of the colonial history that's about the Angkor Wat, about the cultural heritage on one hand, and the history of the Khmer Rouge on the other hand. But that you kind of engage in this colonial history, and then also that your practice is informed by indigenous belief, performative documentation, and human, non-human, the staging of non-human, human and non-human relations kind of opens up a new space of a new possibilities of rewriting colonial history. So I would, the question would be a very direct and pretty obvious question is that how do you think of the potential of indigenous belief or a kind of indigenous practice, for example, in unsettling or offering an alternate history of the colonial history or environmental history in Cambodia? What do you think of this potential in kind of, what potential do you see from this, for this kind of mobilization of this indigenous belief in your work? And for FX, I really enjoy your presentation a lot about this, the act of writing itself, the performative act of writing itself, almost this performative archive, I would say, that is deeply related to the embodied politics of self and identity, but it also the politics of collective trauma and collective violence. So my first question for you, Efek, is that how writing become crucial to you, that you give us a kind of this biographical background that about the Chinese name. But what about the, I want to think about this materiality or embodiment of the act of writing itself. It just has something to your practice, or so it's not just about the signification of the letters or about that, but about this kind of the act of writing itself that has something that has some potential that you see. And also I want to ask a question about how do you move from, what is the moment that a kind of turning point that you kind of move from this personal, very personal history of yours about this name, about the identity, to a kind of a more collective issues of anti-Chinese masculines, for example, during the New Order regime. I think that would be the question for me for each presenters. I can repeat the question if you want to clarify, but then I think after your response, we can move on to this open floor. And for the audience, I think Nina will collect the question for us, and then I can read them, or Jeab can also help me maybe to gather them and then to ask the artists. I think that would be all for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So would you like to answer the questions? Who would go first, or the artists?
Unmute. Yes, it's me.
Yes, we
Yeah.
can hear you.
Yeah. Thanks, Charat. Your first question is relationship between archive and art history.
Yes, I think my question would be the term ERRATA itself seems to suggest that the archive has some corrective relationship to art history, something to rectify the wrong art history writing, for example. But what do you think of that? A kind of more, probably you have a more to say about what the relationship you see between the archive and art history.
Well, I think it depends on each situation. Each country has a different history and a different way of building archives. Some are only government archives. Some are, independent private archives or artist archive. So in Singapore, we have the National Archive, which is more government archive since the late, I think around 1967, 68. And as an independent researcher on Singapore art, I have frustration using the resource of the National Archive because I hardly find any art archives in the National Archive. And just for example, if I have to search for the politician or the VIP instead of the artist's name to find anything related to art, right? So, and then the pictures, usually they do not show the exhibition or the work, but they will show the VIP, maybe, looking at some artwork or shaking hand with the artist, So those are the kind of archive pictures that are found in the Singapore National Archive. When I did my ERRATA research in 2004, right? And so in Singapore situation, the best source of information, art archive, is the artist, right? It's the artist. But the problem is, if the artists don't appear in the news, or if the artists don't appear in the exhibition catalog or the art historical book, then many people don't know them. Then how can they write a more complete art history if the resources are not there, right? So in our situation is that I learned from my museum work, and then I learned from working as an independent researcher with mostly with Fukuoka, and this is how I discover my own artists, right? Especially the older artists. So therefore, my emphasis on my collection after the 2000 is on the older artists, because they need help. They need help to record their memory, their story, because they don't have the tools like the young artists have, right? So yes, so my experience with the old artists is that they have a lot of things printed, materials, photographs, negatives, slides, yeah, and sometimes very rare film footage. So these are the things that are not in the official art history or the so-called art resource that at that time, we don't have the National Gallery. Right? We don't have that resource yet. So during my time when working on the ERRATA, I realized that firstly, I have to share what I have found through my years of collection and also research, right? And then as for the ERRATA exhibition, picking out a typo, error, maybe. So that's what the Peter and the team posed to the viewer when we presented ERRATA, whether it is an actual very silly typo error, or it's just people do not know the history. For example, the Thai October, is it 13? Is it 14? Is it we outsiders sometimes confused too. Yeah, which is the crucial date that we have to know, right?
16 October.
16 now. Yeah. So yeah. So this is just for example, right? In the case of Thailand, right? But for the ERRATA, yes, archive. I often say that certain societies, certain countries do not have the freedom of, let's say, the press, right? Then what is in the archive then? The official archive, right? We talk about the ASEAN, the original ASEAN, and then the subsequent, the full, the bigger ASEAN grouping. There is definitely a difference between these two, the early one and the later one, because we do not know some of the countries that eventually become part of our so-called ASEAN family, right? So where do we start, right? Because we treat them as enemy in the past, right? So how do we learn about their art, right? So of course, the museum in Singapore, they are doing exhibitions, and education, right? But how much can they do? Right? So I don't know whether if I have answered it. The relationship between archive and art history. Of course, after ERRATA exhibitions, we have another almost 2 decades of scholarship, right? The university have now offered art history, right? The museum, the National Gallery, the SAM, the NUS museum, they are all playing some part in educating, yeah, and of course not just Singapore art, but the arts in the region, right? So I think yes, archive. In my case, the ERRATA exhibition was to share the resources that are not in the mainstream place like the National Library, right? So just for example, the socialist art group, the Equator Art Society, I found 6 copies of the exhibition catalog, 58 to 68, right? But at the time of doing ERRATA exhibition, the National Library only had 2 copies, 2 issues, right? So something is wrong with that National Library collection with regards to a very important art group. Okay.
Can I ask, Koi, because you used to work both on this kind of institutional context, and also building your own personal archive.
Yes.
So can you comment on this kind of different way of, like, I don't know, institutionalized way of collection, or a kind of more personal way of doing your archive?
Well, surely, I mean, because of my it's independent work after leaving the museum, right? Especially the artists who were considered dangerous, being communists, leftists, socialists, right? Or making comments about the society through their art, right? So some of these artists were lost in our art history. Yeah, through, let's say, banning, right? Deregistering their status as a society, for example. Yeah, we have 60 years of banned publication in Singapore. 60 years. Yeah. So that's why what motivated me was because Fukuoka as a museum, Fukuoka Art Museum, and then subsequently Fukuoka Asian Art Museum, show me that I should do more as a Singaporean, yeah, to document our own artists, because Mr. Raman Chai Kun had said before, unfortunately, they are a museum that is in charge of 21 countries, right? So whenever that I try to impress them with my new research or discovery, she said, it is still our own people. We are the ones that are responsible to accept them, accept this, new discovery, new artist, new story.
Thank you. Should we go with Avex or Samnang, and then we can come back to Anna's question in the chat box?
Yeah, Chaira, can you repeat your question? Thank you.
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay. So for you, I think what I find very interesting in your work, and this is very straightforward, like it's not just about writing, but it's the act of writing that, like how so I would like to know how the act of writing become integral become very crucial in your work. It's not just writing, but the act of writing, using your own body to write as a kind of performative. And the second one would be, what's your turning point by moving from very biographical, personal history to a kind of more collective history of the Chinese, anti-Chinese massacres in Indonesia?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yes. For me to write or something that someone was doing working or something like that, for me that is a performance. There's a perform. So when I write my name again and again and again, and then there is look like a performance. Like when I went to the mass graves, and then I saw a tombstone, and how I move all of the writing in the tombstone into my work. I cannot just only took a picture, so I put clothes at the top of that tombstone, and then I rubbing with the pastel. That's just only like the act of the children to play something like that, and that's for me. There's also a performance. So I write. That's a performance for me. That's a word. That's a word of bodies to act something like that. And about how to move from my my private problem or my problem with the discrimination and anything to be a public. I realized that discrimination to me, like my Chinese name, it's also happened to other people. Mostly all of the Chinese people has an experience with changed name. So when I express myself, express my problem or my identity about how to show my identity problem to the public, that's also reflecting the other people's problem. That's one. So and when I'm thinking that my problem as an individual become part of the social or public problem. So I think also the public or the history of the public of the Chinese people, that's also my problem. When I'm starting to make a research about the Chinese massacre, I'm starting from when I saw a photograph who made by my father. That's a very individual experience. When I was a child, I always saw a photograph who made by my father about the Chinese society who digging the Chinese dead bodies who killed by the people and buried in everywhere. And they try to exhumation all of that bodies, and my father was documenting that. And then I saw, oh, this is a very interesting documentation. This is not just only about my father works, but also to reflecting the social and political problem of the Chinese people in Indonesia. And then I'm starting to make a research about how or why the Chinese people was massacred at the time in my hometown. That's the first. And after that, so I got another information that in other town, there is also a lot of Chinese was massacred. And then I try to find the documentation, archive and anything, and I cannot find it. It's very difficult. It's look like that there is an untold history. And then I try to find the survivor. When I found the survivor, they always say that I don't want to talk about this because it is a very dark history, and this is I don't want to talk about that. And then it's look like that's a very difficult. So that's why I took 10 years to found all of the whole story about that. And then I found 10 mass graves, and until this time I still got information in other place, in other city, there's another mass graves, and I will go there, of course. So between my individual this problem of because of discrimination, that's also reflecting of the public. And so between individual public, there is a become merged and together, and there is a look like a history of the Chinese people in Indonesia, something like that.
Thank you so much. Now you would like to.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for question. Yeah, my practice, like you see, like more activists, way that we have a problem, and we have a problem, I will go there. Just relate to with your question, how is indigenous or original people think with develop thing with this. So for I come and researching, I learn a lot from them. Actually, they are survive with nature. They not use money. They don't have phone signal, and they have actually they how is important their ritual of believing. It kind of thing for me, I got point of in very important for the human, for development people, or for the development country, or for the colonized people. Okay. So it means that they are survived by nature, and they both human and unhuman, they are got respect. They believing, they respect each other. I think this what that I learned in not only original people in Cambodia, but original all the world. They are have the same believing. And the question how they accept, how they think, what is what how they are seeing the development, how this. I think for this it impact for them already, because they don't go to office. They survive by nature. They respect each other. They sometimes some family they don't eat deer, they don't eat cow, they don't eat crocodile, they don't eat elephant. They only. This is some kind of a good philosophy that I got to know the point. And like now, what do you think about COVID, for example? And what do you think about the world? Cite an alarm that is the world change, like climate change. What is the development country respond? They just blah 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 blah, you know, like this. And what we are seeing like human and non-human. Then I see myself, I'm a human or I'm non-human. Yeah, this is kind. But I think this I'm the one of part of ecology of environment. Yeah.
Can I have one last question for Samnang? What about the reception? I think your performance. Do you think my people fight in I don't know, for example, people in Thailand would not be familiar with this performative art, for example, and what do you think when you have performative art on one hand and also indigenous belief on the other hand? Do you think it make people shocked, or people how do they respond to that when you have this very some kind of thing?
Yeah, of course, it's a new thing. It's a new thing for them. This is a new thing for them. For they are very shocked what I'm doing. And of course, it's for me that I'm say when I did art, I'm thinking this me or not me, like human or not human, you know. The other way I think that this is very a way that I'm pressed to follow my dream, to land issue or political problem, thing to show out and like kind again to what is the problem in now, as I'm a human, but also I'm also that I yeah, of course also I really like try, you know, like all my best to see that, and also to like to another way, like I'm artist, like I try to another way, like how I show my knowledge to share to it through art. Especially I believe one thing of art, this one thing is education. So I mean art is very important, because it is for me art is quite a special or different like part of education, but I mean that has some special education that you don't need to like mathematics or something like that, but I mean that you can show your impression that diplomatic or politics could not do it, but you can do it by a visual way, and a lot of language and come back and turn in kind of respect, and also like yeah, I like say our knowledge, like respect each other. Okay. Yeah. Soft one, not soft one. Yeah.
Thank you. I think we'll return the stage to Jeab or to the audience. Okay.
Thank you so much. I think it was really, really super interesting comments from Terats, and the discussions that I hope that everyone will enjoy it as much as I can. I think we have one question from Anna-Catharina. Anna-Catharina, can you ask a question by yourself?
Yeah, I just want to also add that this was really, really enriching, and thank you for all the questions and other Charat's comments and questions, very thoughtful. And I have questions, of course, to all of you, also to Charat, to everyone. But maybe I just simply quickly, because we have to wrap up now, I maybe ask just to my question to Kwai Samnang, because this was really, really interesting what you said about your artistic research and participant observation, right? And this other ways of knowledge transfer, which is a part of all of your works, right? So, and I have a very, let's say, simple question. So what is the difference between ethnography and art, right? Or should we maybe say goodbye to the idea that there is a thing like objective ethnography, since it's always based on subjective experience, right? Because we are in the West very much based in this very scientific structures, and we need facts, etc. So we are now learning different ways of knowledge transfer, and we are learning, for example, that ethnography is never objective, but it's a part of, let's say, almost an artistic practice. Would you like to say something about this?
I need a bit translate, sorry, because acknowledge okay, and the some word that I can understand. So, but I will be. Can you ask again the word?
Yeah, very, very ethnography, right? So if you anthropology and ethnography, which makes a huge evolution. This science is a young science, or comparably as young, and it's of course always telling stories about other people's stories. So it's a kind of translation. So it can't be something that you measure with digits or something. It's always, you have to re-narrate narrations. You have to retell stories. You have to make histories up out of the histories you hear. So, and I think your work, which is based on this, you live with the people you work with, right? And then you tell your own stories. So my question is it maybe, to put it easy, is it the better way to transfer knowledge to us than by scientific data or something like this? Because you work both with maps and data, but also with storytelling. I don't know.
Why they translate now, but I think
Vesna can help. Yeah.
Sorry for the complicated questions.
It's okay. But if it's easier, you can ask Vesna to help you answer the question.
Yeah, I think like your question is right, that you can reach my fellow way as an artist, and also I'm a human. I'm seeing that it is everything that I learned from happen. There are some the people problem, but like kind of find the as an artist, like I'm go deeper of situation problem and give to visual way to make it different side and way, because side and way is more exactly or more referent way of thing. But of course I'm do reference also, but it's mostly related to of a visual way of art. I'm the same. If always ask myself, if I go want a problem land right or human rights thing, I always ask, is me, is how what I think if my family have been plotting, how my family have been moved out, give you small amount, how if my family die in the Bang River, that when they move the send much for concession development, and how is it real of I. So it's fine for me. This is different of a science way that find of discovery, like step by step to find exactly, and still not exactly, but it means for me it is happen every day. Especially yeah, I tell it's as if we are human or non-human, but it's kind of we are part of a nature. We are like a circle of ecology. We ecology. If we have impact, if some people like saying that if something that environment laws, what do you think? If the hot weather, what do you think? Yeah, if we are die, or what do you think? And what do you do? What will you do? So I think it's my last life or last breath. I will be do something before that. Yeah. So of course, like I'm there. I'm Islam. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
He's a
Very
man.
impressive.
He's a man with the mission.
Yes.
You have one more question for Koh as well.
I think all of you are men with mission. And I just wanted to say, I mean, I have a lot of questions, of course, for Koh and also for FX Hasano. I think it's all about so much about storytelling, which is history telling. And maybe briefly, Hasano, it's you do repeatedly write history, overwrite history, and create la différence. And also your biography. I just, maybe it's too complicated history for the few minutes we have left, but can you maybe even talk about were there reactions from the state? I mean, your work is very much acknowledged internationally, and I know that you have a lot of friends and fans in the art scene in Indonesia, but did you ever experience censorship, or can you talk about this? Sorry for asking these heavy questions in the last second.
That's question for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah. That's very interesting, and then thank you very much that you you saw my work from this presentation. But I prefer to talk to answer about your question about the this is look like anthropologist or ethnographic. Yes, that's my art practice from 1985. I'm starting my work with research, and I don't have any methodologies. After several years, maybe more than 10 years or 15 years or 20 years, and suddenly the people say, your work looks like a visual ethnography. And then I said, yes, that's true. But I don't know anymore about the visual ethnography. And then I read a book, and then I saw, yeah, all of the methodologies in visual ethnography I already practicing in my research. But not just only a visual, but also about auto ethnography. So everything was starting from my experience as an individual, as a person, and then I'm starting that. So I found my experience and anything, and then I try to connect it with the other people. Is that true that my experience is quite same with other, or reflecting the other people experience? And that's right. So I use like auto ethnography for as a methodology of my research, and then that's what I do. Always what I do. I done from one time to other, something like that. But now I have a problem this time. because I'm such Chinese women in the family. But because I don't have any fairies because I'm a man. So this is a problem. But I'm very interested with because I make a research a lot about Chinese people, and then thinking that I'm think very hard how I can talk, but not to make me it's look like that I know a lot about women because I know I'm not a woman, of course. So I work with the other people, with the curator. She is of course she's a woman. I work with the other people who are women, and then I talk about this, and then they talk and they make something like that. So I don't want to make any statement, but I just only to portray or to like a screenshot what they talk, what they doing, something like that. But this is my new experience. I hope I can show you next time. Thank you.
Okay. So
Thank
do we
you.
have more questions? Are we okay now?
I have a lot of questions, but I think we're running out of time.
Yeah, it's too bad. We should do 48 hours talk, with
Yes.
so that we have more time to discuss among each other. But
Yes.
I'm really, really happy to hear you guys, especially with artists and Shairat's comments, very insightful, and also Katharina, thank you very much. Someone told me about the title of the show, ERRATA, and I think it's MAIIAM, and he said that it can be a lifetime project, because we really have problems with the grand narrative of art history, and also of whatever it is, in our own countries. So it means that we still have a lot of things to do, especially through the our visual arts practice, and also with your writings, Shairat. We are so happy to have you here. And before I end, and I also want to thank everyone who's here and who's gonna see our video after this. Thanks for joining the lecture, and please join us in our monthly program of collecting entanglements and embodied history. So the next program will take place on Thursday, 24th of February, which will be Katharina's turn. She will do.
I will. It
Yeah.
will be with Vietnamese art, or the artists Sung Chiu and Abidjan Toto, and they will think. I think they will talk about nation and anarchy.
Okay, cool.
And solidarity. Yes.
Yeah. And for more information, please visit collectingentanglements.net. And if you are still in Thailand, please take your Valentines, your friends, your family to see ERRATAs. The last day is the Valentine's Day. Okay? Have a good day, everyone. สวัสดีค่ะ
Thank you, Jeab.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much for
Thank you.
all of you.